I wasn't supposed to be living with him. That was never the plan. Originally, I was going to crash at my sister's for a couple weeks while I looked for a new apartment. My lease had ended early, my ex and I had split. Messy, but not tragic. And I just needed somewhere cheap and temporary while I got my shit together. But my sister's place turned out to be a zoo, 3 kids under 6, a barking golden retriever, and a husband who definitely didn't want an extra adult sleeping on their living room floor. So after 5 days of cereal bowls on the couch and stepping on Legos barefoot, I texted the only other person I could think of, Josh. Josh wasn't my best friend, more like someone I used to be close with. We met in college, shared a few classes, even lived in the same dorm for a year. We'd lost touch since then. Life got busy, as it does, but every now and then we'd like each other's posts or comment something dumb under a meme. Still, I knew he had a spare room, and I figured it wouldn't hurt to ask. Me, "Hey man, random, are you still renting that room out?" He replied within a few minutes, "Josh, I am. You need a place?" Me, "Just for a bit. Maybe a month? 2 tops." Josh, "Come by tonight. Key's yours if you want it." Just like that. No drama, no 20 questions, no guilt. When I showed up at his place that night, I wasn't expecting much. I had a duffel bag, a half-dead phone, and 0 emotional energy. But Josh opened the door with a smile that hadn't changed since college, and suddenly I remembered why we used to click so well. "Hey," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "Hey," I said back, trying not to look like someone who had just escaped toddler hell. He took my bag, tossed it by the couch, and clapped me on the back. "You look like shit. Thanks." The apartment was nice, bigger than I expected. Clean, a little minimalist, but in a cozy way. The spare room was small, but the bed was made, and the sheets looked fresh. "You can stay as long as you want," he said, leaning against the doorway. "Seriously, no rush." I blinked. "You sure? I know it was supposed to be for a roommate, not a squatter." He shrugged. "I'm not in a hurry, rent's paid. I just like having someone else around." I don't know what it was. Maybe the way he said it, casual and sincere, but something in my chest loosened a little. "All right," I said. "Deal." For the first few days, things were simple. Josh worked from home. He did freelance photography and editing, and I was doing contract work for a small UX team, mostly remote. We kept to ourselves during the day, had dinner together a couple times a week, and occasionally stayed up watching Netflix until one of us dozed off on the couch. It was easy, comfortable. But there were little things I noticed, like how he never wore socks in the apartment, always barefoot, even in winter, or how he hummed when he cooked, some off-key melody that changed every day, or how he always smelled like cedar and black coffee, even at night. And then there was the way he looked at me sometimes, not in a dramatic rom-com kind of way, just longer than usual, like he was trying to remember something. One night, maybe 2 weeks in, we were sitting on the floor of the living room, surrounded by empty takeout containers. The TV was playing something neither of us were really watching. Josh leaned back against the couch, legs stretched out, head tilted toward me. "You seem better," he said. "Then what?" "Then when you got here, you looked like a kicked dog," I snorted. "Thanks again." He smiled. "I mean it. You've got color in your face now." I looked at him. Maybe it's all the MSG. But he didn't laugh this time. Just kept looking at me, head tilted, eyes soft. "What?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing," he said. "Just good to have you here." Something about the way he said it made my chest ache. I looked away, picked at a piece of cold broccoli, tried not to let the silence get too loud. "I'm not always easy to live with," I said eventually. "Just a heads up." Josh shrugged. "Neither am I." We didn't say much else that night, but as I crawled into bed, I realized I didn't feel alone anymore. Not in the usual way, and that scared the hell out of me. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon. For a second, I thought I was still dreaming, until I heard the faint sound of a skillet clinking and the low hum of music playing from the kitchen. I rolled out of bed, groggy, hair a mess, and padded barefoot down the hall. Josh was at the stove, shirtless, wearing a pair of flannel pajama pants that hung low on his hips. His back was to me, and his shoulders were broader than I remembered. The morning light spilled across his skin, catching the curve of his spine and the ink of a half-finished tattoo just beneath his shoulder blade. "Morning," he said without turning around. "Smells like bribery," I muttered, rubbing sleep from my eyes. He chuckled. "Just trying to win best roommate of the month." I grabbed a mug from the cabinet and poured myself coffee. "You're up early. Didn't sleep much." "Why not?" He hesitated for a beat. "Just stuff in my head." I didn't press him. We ate breakfast at the kitchen island, mostly quiet. But it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that settles between people when they don't need to fill the space anymore. Afterward, he grabbed his camera bag and said he had a shoot downtown. I spent most of the day half working, half scrolling through job listings, trying not to overthink everything. When he came home, he was quieter than usual. Not cold, just tired. He dropped his bag in the corner, stretched, and sank onto the couch with a sigh. "Long day?" I asked. He nodded. Lots of fake smiles. "You mean from you, or the people in front of the camera?" He gave me a look. "Both." We didn't talk much that night. Just ordered Thai, watched an episode of something neither of us paid attention to, and ended up sitting side by side on the couch, legs almost touching. Almost. At some point, I dozed off, and when I woke up, still on the couch, blanket half draped over me, I realized Josh was asleep too. His head was tilted back, mouth slightly open, one hand resting dangerously close to my knee. It should have felt weird, but it didn't. What did feel weird was the way my chest tightened when I looked at him, the way I noticed the faint freckles on his neck, or the little scar near his eyebrow, the way my eyes lingered too long. I got up carefully, trying not to wake him. But as I pulled the blanket over his shoulders, his eyes fluttered open. "Hey," he mumbled, voice thick with sleep. "You good?" "Yeah," I whispered. "Go back to sleep." But he didn't. He sat up slowly, rubbing his face. "You were shivering." "What?" "You looked cold," I blinked. "You were watching me?" "Not in a weird way. Just..." He sighed, then met my eyes. "You've been doing that a lot lately." "Doing what?" He didn't answer right away. "Looking like you're somewhere else." I didn't know what to say to that, mostly because he wasn't wrong. "I'm just figuring stuff out," I said finally. Josh nodded slowly. "Me too." We looked at each other for a moment longer than necessary. Then, without really thinking, I said, "Do you want to go for a walk?" It was past midnight. Cold outside. But he just said sure, and pulled on a hoodie. We walked 2 blocks to a park that was usually empty at that hour. The sky was clear, stars barely visible through the city haze. Our hands brushed once. Then again. I don't know if it was the cold or the quiet or the fact that we'd both been circling something for days. But finally, I asked, "Hey, have you ever thought about us?" He stopped walking. I kept my eyes forward, heart racing. "About us how?" he asked carefully. I shrugged. "I don't know, just as something more." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, softly, "Yeah, I've thought about it." My breath caught. "But I didn't say anything," he continued, "because I didn't want to mess up what we have." I turned to face him. "What do we have?" He looked at me, and this time, he didn't look away. "I don't know," he said, "but I don't want to lose it." The wind picked up, cold against my face, but my chest felt warm. "We don't have to define it," I said. "Not right now." He nodded. "Okay." We walked back in silence, side by side. And just before we reached the apartments, his fingers brushed mine again, and this time he didn't pull away. Neither did I. After that night, something changed. It wasn't dramatic. There wasn't a kiss. No confessions under a full moon. Just a quiet shift. Like the volume got turned down on everything else, and we started hearing each other more clearly. Josh didn't bring it up again. Neither did I. But the way we moved around each other changed. He'd hand me a cup of coffee in the morning, and his fingers would linger a second longer on mine. I'd brush past him in the kitchen, and we'd both pretend we didn't notice the way our bodies grazed. He started sitting closer on the couch, not right next to me, but close enough that our knees would touch if either of us moved just a little. And sometimes we did. And sometimes we didn't. It was like we were both waiting for something. Two people leaning in, but never far enough to tip the balance. One night, I caught him looking at me while I was brushing my teeth. I glanced up in the mirror, toothbrush hanging from my mouth, and there he was, standing in the hallway, arms crossed, just watching. I raised an eyebrow. "You good?" He blinked, like I'd startled him. "Yeah, just thinking." I spit, rinsed. "About?" He shrugged, then smiled. "You!" I froze. He walked away before I could say anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to slow my thoughts, but they kept circling. His face, his voice, the weight of the silence between us. I wanted to ask what he meant, but I was scared of the answer, or maybe scared of what would happen if he asked the same thing back. A few nights later, we were both up late again. I'd had a couple beers. He'd had one of those overly sweet ciders he pretended to hate but secretly liked. We were sitting on the floor, backs against the couch, a playlist running quietly in the background. "You remember that night sophomore year?" he asked suddenly. I turned to look at him. "Which one?" "The night we got locked out of the dorm, had to sleep in your car." I laughed. "Oh God, yeah, it was freezing." "You let me use your jacket," he said. "Even though you were shivering." I shrugged. "You looked worse than me." He smiled. I remember thinking, if I leaned over just a little, I could have kissed you. My stomach dropped. He looked at me then, not smiling, not teasing. "You ever think about that?" I nodded. "Yeah, I have." We were both quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Why didn't we?" "I think we were scared." "Are we still?" I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't just someone I used to know anymore. He was someone I let in every day. Someone who made space for me without asking for anything in return. Someone who had become part of my routine, my thoughts, my quiet. "No," I said, "I'm not." He leaned in, just a little, testing, waiting. So I met him halfway. The kiss wasn't fireworks. It wasn't cinematic. It was warm, careful, familiar, like something we'd already done 100 times in dreams we never admitted to having. When we pulled apart, he didn't say anything. Neither did I. We just sat there, close, legs touching, breathing slow and steady. Eventually, he said, "This changes things, doesn't it?" I nodded. "Yeah. You okay with that?" I thought about how scared I used to be, about how different it felt now. "I think I am," I said. He reached over and took my hand. Quiet. Simple. And we sat there like that, the room dim around us, music still playing softly from his laptop. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like permission. We didn't talk about it the next morning. The kiss, I mean. Josh made coffee like usual. I grabbed 2 mugs and set them on the counter. We moved around each other like nothing had changed, except everything had. There was a pause, right after I poured the coffee, when our eyes met across the kitchen. I thought maybe he was going to say something. Clarify. Define. But instead, he just handed me the sugar and said, "We're out of milk." It felt like a choice, and I let it slide. That day, we both worked from home, but we barely talked. It wasn't tension, exactly. It was more like awareness. Every time I passed him in the hallway, every time he leaned across the table to grab his charger, my skin prickled. I was aware of his body in space the way you are when something intimate's been left unfinished. By the time the sun went down, I felt like I was going to crawl out of my skin. So I did something stupid. I asked if he wanted to go out. "To a bar?" he asked, looking up from his laptop. "Yeah," I said. "Just to get out, reset." He hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, cool." We ended up at a small bar on the corner. Half empty, dim, quiet enough to talk, but loud enough to ignore each other if we wanted to. I ordered bourbon. He got another one of those fruity ciders. We sat at the bar instead of a booth, side by side like strangers. At first, it was easy. Talked about dumb shit. TV shows, a neighbor's dog that never shut up, the new pizza place that always messed up our orders. But eventually, we ran out of filler. I was the one who cracked first. So, I started, tracing the rim of my glass. We're just not going to talk about it? He didn't pretend not to know. I didn't want to assume what it meant to you. It wasn't nothing, I said quietly. He looked at me. Good, because it wasn't nothing to me either. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. He turned on the bar stool to face me more fully. I've wanted to do that for a long time. You know that, right? No, I said honestly. I really didn't. I didn't know how to show it, he said. And then you moved away, got into a relationship. I figured I missed my shot. I looked down. That relationship was a mess. You probably didn't miss anything. I might have missed you, he said. That shut me up. He finished his drink in one long pull, set the glass down a little harder than necessary, then looked at me again. I'm not great at this, saying things. You just did, I said. That was pretty clear. We didn't kiss again at the bar. That felt too loaded, too public. But when we got home and I closed the door behind us, Josh turned to me and said, "Can I?" He didn't finish the question, but I stepped toward him anyway. This kiss was different, less cautious, more certain. His hands found my waist, mine slid under the hem of his hoodie, feeling the warm skin of his back. He tasted like cider and something softer I couldn't name. We didn't talk. Not until we were in my room, backs against my bed, clothes still on, our breathing slowing. We didn't sleep together. That wasn't what this was. It was closer. He rested his head against my shoulder, one arm draped across my chest. I held him there, my fingers brushing the edge of his wrist. You know this complicates things, right? I murmured. Yeah, he said, voice low. But I don't want to stop. He shifted slightly. Me neither. Outside, the city moved on. A car drove past. Somewhere, a siren echoed. But in that room, everything was still. Not simple, not perfect, but real. I didn't wake up next to him. Josh had slipped out of my bed sometime in the night, but he'd left a note. Just a quick one, scribbled on the back of a receipt. Early shoot. Didn't want to wake you. Coffee's on. Last night was real. That last line sat with me. Last night was real. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and read the note again like it might change. It didn't. It wasn't like we hadn't crossed lines before. That blurry space between friends who maybe feel more, maybe don't know how to name it. But this was different. There was intention behind it. Something claimed, even if we hadn't said the words. When he got home that afternoon, I didn't know what to expect. Part of me was ready for him to act like nothing happened, like we were just two guys who got too close one night and didn't want to deal with it. But he came in, dropped his bag, walked straight over and kissed me. No hesitation, no big lead up, just kissed me like it was the most normal thing in the world. And somehow, it was. Hey, he said, pulling back just enough to breathe. Hey, I said back, a little stunned. He nodded toward the couch. Want to sit? We ended up tangled in each other, not talking much, just watching whatever was on. His hand stayed on my leg the whole time, and mine never stopped moving. Up his arm, across his chest, tracing the seams of his hoodie. We were still figuring out what we were now, if we were something. But we weren't not. That night, when I was brushing my teeth again, he leaned against the doorframe like he had a few nights earlier. Only this time, he stepped inside. I like this, he said. What? Sharing a bathroom? He smirked. No, you. Being here. Waking up knowing you're down the hall. My heart did something stupid in my chest. I like it too, I said. Then, because I had to ask, so what are we doing? Josh scratched the back of his neck. Honestly, I don't know yet, but I want to keep doing it, whatever this is. He looked at me, a little uncertain. Do you? I nodded. Yeah, I do. And that was it. No labels, no plan, just a shared yes. From that point on, the shift wasn't slow anymore. He started sleeping in my room more than his. We started cooking together instead of just ordering in. He'd play with my fingers under the table when we ate. I'd steal his hoodie and pretend it wasn't on purpose. Once, I caught him staring at me from across the room, and when I asked what, he just said, "Nothing, I'm just glad you're here." He still didn't talk much about feelings. Not directly. But he showed them in little ways. Like the way he started saying, "I'll be home around 7" instead of, "I'll be back later." Or the way he texted me mid-shoot to ask if I wanted anything from the bakery he passed. Or the night I came home to find my favorite chips and a 6-pack of my go-to beer waiting on the counter. No note. Just there. We never had the boyfriend talk. But by the end of that month, it didn't feel like he was my roommate anymore. He was just mine. And I was his. One night, I walked into the apartment and found Josh asleep on the couch, curled up in my hoodie. It was inside out, sleeves a little too long for him. He was half buried under a throw blanket, one arm draped off the side, phone resting on his chest like it had fallen there mid-scroll. And for a second, I just stood there, watching him. Not in a creepy way, just something about it hit me. The guy who used to be my almost friend, then my unexpected roommate, now looked like someone I came home to, like a habit I didn't want to break. I sat down gently on the edge of the couch. He stirred. "Hey," he murmured, eyes barely open. "Hey," I said back. "Long day?" "Mm-hmm," he mumbled, reaching for me. His hand found my leg, thumb pressing lightly into the fabric of my jeans. "You smell like cold air." "You smell like sleep," he smiled, eyes still shut. "You hungry?" I asked, brushing his hair back gently. "Only for you," I laughed, rolling my eyes. "You're disgusting." "You love it," he murmured. He wasn't wrong. We ended up ordering pizza, splitting a blanket on the couch, and falling asleep there again, something we'd started doing more often than not. Sometimes the bed felt too formal, too structured. The couch felt like a middle ground. Still safe, still us, but without the weight of what it might mean. It was sometime during week 7 that things got complicated. I got a call about an apartment I'd applied for before I even moved in with Josh. I'd completely forgotten about it. Small studio, decent price, quiet part of town. The landlord said I could move in by next week. And suddenly, I was faced with a decision I didn't think I'd have to make. I didn't tell Josh right away. Not because I wanted to keep it from him, but because I didn't know how to bring it up. It wasn't just a lease. It was a question I didn't know if I wanted answered. That night, I barely touched my dinner. Josh noticed, obviously. "You good?" he asked, mouthful of noodles. "Yeah," I said, "just tired." He nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't buy it. Later, when we were in bed, his bed, he wrapped his arm around me like he always did, pulled me in, held me there. "You've been quiet lately," he said into the dark. "I got offered that apartment," I said. He didn't respond right away. His breath stayed even. "How soon?" he asked finally. "Next week." He shifted slightly. "You gonna take it?" "I don't know." Another long pause. Then, "Do you want to?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. "I didn't expect to get attached," I said after a while. "Not like this." He nodded against my shoulder. "Me neither." We lay there for a long time, not talking, not moving, just breathing. Eventually, he said, "If you want to go, I'll help you move." I turned to look at him. "And if I want to stay," he didn't hesitate, "then I'll make room in the closet." That hit harder than it should have. Not a dramatic speech, not some over-the-top romantic gesture, just a quiet, clear offer, Stay, if you want. And I realized I did. Not because it was easy, not because I was afraid of living alone again, but because this didn't feel temporary anymore. It felt like home. I didn't move out. The next morning, I called the landlord and turned down the apartment. Said something vague about a change in plans. He didn't ask questions. Josh was making pancakes when I told him. He didn't react right away. Just flipped one, let it land softly in the pan, and said, "You sure?" "I'm sure," I said. He slid the pancake onto a plate, set it in front of me, and leaned on the counter. "Good," he said, "because I already cleared the dresser for you." That made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so him. No big moment, no speech, just actions. Quiet and solid and real. The next few days were a blur of rearranging. I moved my stuff from the spare room to his. We boxed up things we didn't need, donated some of the crap neither of us remembered owning, and suddenly the apartment felt different. More lived in, more ours. There were still no labels. We didn't need them. But there were things that said it anyway, like the way he kissed the back of my neck when I was at the sink, or how he always left the porch light on when I came home late, or the way his hand found mine under the blanket during movie nights, even when we were half asleep. One night, a couple weeks later, we had friends over. Nothing big, just drinks, music, someone made too many nachos. Josh introduced me, without hesitating, just said, "This is my guy," like it was the most natural thing in the world. No one blinked. After everyone left, we stood in the doorway for a second, watching the street, letting the cool air wash over us. "You good?" he asked, slipping an arm around my waist. "Yeah," I said. "I think I've been good for a while. Just didn't realize it." He leaned in and kissed me, slow and warm. Then he said, "You know I was in love with you back in college, right?" I turned, surprised. "What?" "I didn't say anything," he continued, "because I figured you didn't feel the same. And then you left, and I told myself to move on." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" He shrugged. "I didn't know how to be that brave." I looked at him, really looked. This guy, the first thought I knew, who had turned out to be so much more than I expected. "You're braver now," I said. He smiled. "Only because you showed up at my door." "I didn't come looking for this," I said. "I know," he said, "but I'm glad you found it anyway." And that was it. No perfect ending. No slow motion montage. Just two people who used to orbit each other, finally stepping into the same gravity. I used to think love was this huge, dramatic thing. Grand gestures, fireworks, big moments. But now I think it's quieter than that. It's someone saving you a seat, keeping the light on, making space in the closet before you even ask. It's a place that has your name on it, even if it took you a while to see it. And when you do see it, you stay, because you're home.